Okay, I think we are live. My wife is going to check real quick and get on the internet so she can tell me if you can hear me or not. We'll watch the chat box over here as well. And welcome, folks. My name's Chuck Holton. If you don't know me, I am a war correspondent that does freelance work for not only the Christian Broadcasting Network, but other places too, just wherever I can get the word out. Okay, everybody hears me. Good. Let's see. I've been in Israel since about the 10th of October, so just a couple days, three days after the terrible attacks on October 7th. And I've been reporting on the conflict, and I'm bringing these nightly sort of informal broadcasts to tell you, as to the best of my ability, what is going on the ground here in Israel. I'm in Jerusalem right now, and it's currently about 4:40 on, what is today? Friday, December 1st. Holy smokes. We just started Shabbat over here. If you are not familiar with how that works in Israel, essentially everything in the entire country comes to a screeching halt at about, I don't know, noon or 1 o'clock on Friday until about 3 to 5, 6 o'clock, something like that on Saturday. Now, I think Shabbat doesn't actually start until maybe 3 to 5 o'clock, but it's supposed to be like sundown, I think. But yeah, Shabbat Shalom. But you know, if you think about it, I've been here before for tours, and we've been here over Shabbat, and we thought it was a little weird, just the way that things change. The elevators, for example, you can't push the button on the elevator; it won't even work. So the elevators, you just have to wait for the doors to open, and you get in, and the elevator goes up every single floor all the way to the top, and then every single floor all the way to the bottom. And so it takes like 25 minutes to get up to the top floor of the hotel, things like that. You know, they're just they are very, very committed to not working during the Sabbath, and that's great. Some people have a big problem with me drinking tea while I'm giving the news, and let me just say, I don't care. I'm sorry. Perhaps where you grew up, talking to somebody while you have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea in your hand is inappropriate, but with these little kind of fireside chat kind of format, I'm not going to play that game, not to mention the fact that I'm making 2.5 hours of television every day, and my voice just can't handle it unless I've got some honey tea from my honey over there. So I'll try not to gross you out by drinking too much tea, but please just bear with me for that. I'm going to fix this because you see that? The cameraman in me can't handle that thing right there coming out the side of my neck. I got to cover that up or something. So I'm going to move the camera over here. And again, this is, whoop, wrong way. Maybe. Oh, I know why. Because I'm connected to the wrong camera. No wonder. I got to move this one. There we go. Okay. There's actually 2 cameras on this setup that I've got here, which is maybe a little bit too much for a guy like me to run, because I can't even there's a lot of moving parts on that thing. Okay, so let's talk about what's going on today, because there's a lot going on in the news. You've probably heard that there has been a resumption of hostilities. I'm listening to the call to prayer now, the Muslim call to prayer from the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is about half a mile, well, maybe about a mile that way. It's the other side of the old city. You can see the old city from here. I'll show you this. Oh, no, I can't show you that because I'm on the wrong camera. Never mind. The conflict or contrast in this land between Judaism and Islam is very apparent, and in a lot of ways, it's just living here has been a real education. The education of moving to some place where you're not just skimming off the top and doing the touristy things and that sort of thing, but actually going into the culture, being immersed in the culture, and having to learn how things work. So we thinking about Shabbat. We were going to stop for lunch someplace. And it was just after 12 o'clock, and we stopped in a little cafe around the corner, and they said, "Oh, we're closing up. We're closing up." And I'm like, "Well, I don't get it. Like, what? Why does everybody start closing up at like noon when Shabbat doesn't start until like sunset?" And they're like, "Well, you have to understand that everything stops. So if you're riding the bus, the city buses stop running. And so the bus drivers got to get home before Shabbat starts. So you have to sort of backwards plan. Okay, the bus driver's got to get home from work. And so he's got to park the bus at, say 3 o'clock. And then the buses have got, so they back everything up. People start, like wrapping everything up really around noon. And now I got like, oh, I get it, because not everybody has a car. They are sending their last messages on their phones because they're not going to be on their phones over the Shabbat, the time of the Sabbath. They're going to get their nails done I don't know why, maybe because you want to look good on the Sabbath while you're resting at home. The nail salons are all full. Very interesting. Yes, somebody said, please don't forget to hit the like button there on YouTube, because we're finding out more and more about the way the analytics work, or the YouTube algorithm works, and YouTube shows this live program to more and more people, the more people we have who hit that like button. So that's why we keep asking you to hit the like button, because it helps get the word out about what we're doing. All right, so let's talk about the war this morning. Well, there have been ceasefire violations all throughout this ceasefire. This lasted about a week. They've been here and there. The Israelis have basically chosen to ignore them so that they could go ahead and get more of their people out, and that they've been able to get. I think they got almost 100, or about 100 total prisoners released, or not prisoners, hostages, and that was in exchange for 100, be well over 200 prisoners, nearly 300 prisoners released on their side. So the Israelis letting those guys out of jail. Yesterday we had a mass shooting, which is what in the United States would have been termed a mass shooting. Here they call it Tuesday, kind of thing. Just about 2 miles from where we're standing. And we drive by there all the time. It's on a main road that's right at the entrance to Jerusalem. You might have heard about that. There were actually, the number of people wounded kept going up, because they found out that people got wounded and ran off and took themselves to the hospital. But there were 15 total people shot. 3 of them died. Very sad. There's video out there of the actual incident, and it only lasted seconds. It didn't last long at all. The people were not. The shooting started. These guys parked their white car at the bus stop, jumped out, left the car sitting there, and just started shooting. People immediately just started scattering and running off. It always surprised me though. People don't run very fast. If you're being shot at, there are maybe a few times in your life when you should give it 100%. And that would be one of them. And there are people who are like, oh, and they're kind of running away. And you realize, I think most people pretty much never run all out, except when you're a kid, maybe. And is a pretty good skill to have, to be able to run all out, especially for a guy like me that's in my line of work. And so part of my workouts are to do wind sprints specifically to keep myself in good enough shape to be able to sprint. And I'm not talking about for miles or anything like that, not long distance, but even just 50 yards, something like that, just far enough to get to cover. Because so many people are so sedentary that they don't think about the fact that if you have to call on your body to do something highly physical, and you just aren't prepared, it could be life or death in a situation like that. And watching the video of that shooting just reminded me of why I try so hard to, I mean, I don't need to look like Adonis or anything, but I just try to, make sure everything works, right? Just keep it working. And sprinting is a good skill to have. So, if you're into lifting like I am, or if you're into Zumba or running, long distance jogging or whatever, might not be a bad idea to think about, could I take off at a dead run and run like my life depended on it, even for just a short distance? Something to think about. 3 people were killed in that shooting, and within just seconds, there were 2 IDF soldiers that were on their way home or back from being at home, and 1 civilian that was armed who shot the 2 brothers and killed them. I'm not positive. It kind of looks like one of the brothers was shot, tried to surrender, and then the video cuts off. So he may have been shot again, or he may have just fallen over and died after he was like kind of on his knees. But this is the ultimate Jerusalem version of, it takes a good guy with a gun to stop a bad guy with a gun. Israel has done the same thing that much of the world has done over the past 10 years, which is reduce people's ability to defend themselves in the vain hope that by making everybody more vulnerable, you will make them safer. But that's not how it works in the real world. Now, if that shooting had happened 2 months ago, there would have been a lot more than 3 people killed, because those guys had a lot of ammo, they had extra guns, they had extra ammo in their car, and it was clear they planned to carry out a massive mass shooting. They were not able to kill more than 3 people because almost instantly there were people shooting back at them. And that's because since October 7th, this whole nation has armed up. They're all carrying guns. I mean, not all, but a lot more people are carrying guns in the street, and they're not carrying a Glock. They're carrying an M16. People are walking around here with guns all over the place. Now, do I feel unsafe walking around with all those guns around? Not in the least. They keep them. This is something interesting that I've seen here, and I'm not sure I agree with it, but this is something that you see here with all of the people that are carrying guns. They must carry them with an empty chamber, meaning no bullet in the pipe. And they have a red plastic flag that goes in the chamber of the weapon, and you close the bolt on that red flag, and it sticks out of the chamber so that anybody can see that it does not have a round in the chamber. Now, it doesn't work that way for pistols, but for the M16s, AR-15s, M4s, whatever, they have to have that in there. And so they have a full magazine of ammunition in the weapon, but in order to get at the ammunition, they have to rack the chamber, pull the charging handle back and rack around into the chamber before they can fire. I wonder if that extra amount of time is something that you would want to have or not. I have a good friend named John Correa who does active self-protection here on YouTube, and he's got 3.5 million followers, so he knows what he's talking about. And he vehemently says that you should not carry on an empty chamber. You should carry with a round in the chamber if you're carrying to protect yourself, because he's watched a lot of real world encounters that have required people to defend themselves, and they often happen so fast that you don't have time, that it would be life or death to take the extra time to just rack around in the chamber. Here, they want people not to carry on a full chamber, but the weapon still has a safety on it. So I don't know that it just reduces the chances that somebody might have an accidental discharge, but it increases the chances that more people are going to get shot while you're over there fiddling with your weapon, trying to get around in the chamber. And so I'm not sure how I feel about that, at least with long guns. Certainly agree with John Correa. If you have a pistol, that it's probably not a good idea to carry on an empty chamber, because it's not going to go off while it's in your holster. As long as you have a decent holster, you're not carrying it in your pocket or something, it's probably best to keep around in the chamber. Okay, but that's the foray into the realm of my expert gun opinion. After that shooting, right down the street here, I'm going to turn this light down just a little bit. It's getting dark out there, and my light is way too bright. Get sunburned by that thing. So after the shooting took place, it took the police here very little time to determine who these guys were. As it turns out, they were these brothers. One of the brothers had recently been released from prison. I think maybe both of them had been in prison. They were not released as part of this hostage exchange thing, but he had served like 10 years in prison here in Israel for planning other terror attacks or assisting and facilitating other terror attacks. So these were hardcore dudes. These were Hamas fighters. And they lived in the West Bank. And one of the policies that Israel has is that if you commit a terror act on Israel, we will flatten your house. So they went to these people's house in the West Bank and flattened his house. And they do it very, very quickly. Pretty amazing. See, just caught a question running by here. Were the 3 killed yesterday all Israeli, or were 2 of the 3 the shooters? No, all 3 who died were the Israelis. That's not counting the shooters who also died. So it would be a total of 5 that died. I try not to pay a lot of attention to the questions scrolling by and stuff when I'm kind of doing this until I'm ready to answer questions, because it's I'm ADD enough as it is, and I want to stay focused. So they went and flattened their house. It's telling that these guys came from the West Bank, because don't find yourself thinking that Hamas exists only in Gaza. Hamas has fighters all over the place, not just in Gaza, not just in Israel. They have fighters in Lebanon and probably Syria. Well, I know Syria for sure. I've run into Hezbollah fighters in Syria when I was there. So, yeah, that's exciting. So, at 7 o'clock this morning, the hostilities commenced anew, and they commenced for 2 reasons: because of all of the ceasefire violations that have happened from Gaza since the beginning of the ceasefire. Now, there haven't been rockets fired until early this morning, before 7, before the IDF resumed their fighting. Rockets started coming out of Gaza again, but also because they did not provide a list of the hostages that they were going to release next. And that's probably because they are running out of a list of women and children hostages that they could come up with. There may be more that they're not sure about. Again, we found out this terrible news last night from Hamas that woman with her little babies, her husband was also taken. He was taken separately. And I just spaced on the name again. Shoot. Everybody keeps asking about. It starts with a B. They're saying that the Hamas alerted the IDF that they were killed. There was a report yesterday that Hamas had turned over to the IDF the bodies of the woman and her children, but I haven't been able to corroborate that. I'm not positive that happened. But Hamas claims that they're dead, and there's a lot of reason to believe them. An interesting development with that's really horrifying and sad is that we weren't sure whether the father was alive or not, because the last footage that was seen of him being carried away was him being carried away to as they were beating him in the head with a hammer. So we weren't sure if he survived. But apparently he is alive, because they put out a video of him on Twitter today, bearded, sitting in a room, white wall behind him, and they, on camera, told him that his wife and children were dead. Just so that they could record his sobbing after they alerted him to the fact that his entire family had been killed. So that they could weaponize that grief by putting that video out on social media. If you want to know what an uncivilized barbarian looks like, it's somebody who would do that. Not only murder your family, but record your grief at the murder and then gleefully spread it around. And there are still people in the United States who support these folks. I'm tempted to call them animals, but that would be very disrespectful to animals. Animals don't intentionally do things that are cruel, but human animals do. These guys are the lowest form of scum. They really are. And we've seen lots of videos of these guys, the Hamas fighters, literally having to protect the hostages from the people in Gaza as they were trying to turn them over to the IDF. And I just have to say, it becomes more and more difficult for people to have any kind of sympathy or empathy for people in Gaza and what they're going through there when you see videos like that. But and I've had a conversation today with a friend who was like, Israel is just going to make them hate them all the more by bombing again. And I was like, you can't make any Palestinian hate Israel more than they already do, because the level of their hatred is already 100%. It's off the charts up here. And so you're not going to get them to hate you more. But at the same time, to be civilized means to continue to be empathetic or sympathetic, as the case may be, with people who are suffering, even if they don't deserve it. And I think what makes me sad, thinking about the people in Gaza, is that it doesn't have to be that way. Every ounce of energy and resources that they expend to try to hurt Israel and Israelis could have been better spent improving their own lot in life. And so they are where they are because of their own decisions. And they've denied God. They've denied God. And when you deny God, you are given over to a depraved mind. And so they're depraved. They don't understand that everything they do hurts themselves. It's very common with terrorists or terror countries or countries that don't have a foundational precept of the one true God. They don't even understand that what they're doing is they're smacking themselves in the face over and over again. And they just want to find somebody to blame for the fact that they're hurting themselves. And that's what I think you see in Gaza. So Gaza is now under a very heavy bombing attack again. Yesterday, I was down in the south meeting with IDF troops, commanders, and with medical personnel in Ashkelon. The base that I was at had a lot of armor on it. A lot. I mean, hundreds. You probably have never seen so much armor in one place. I mean, even if you've seen a convoy of tanks going by or something on the road in the States or something, this was hundreds and hundreds, and I mean, probably 100 acres of tanks. And not just tanks, but I mean, lots of armor. And you could tell that they were preparing for much of it to go back into the fight. As we were driving around out there, there were lots of tanks and other armor that were moving around, and you could tell that they were prepped and ready to go into battle. So I had a pretty good feeling yesterday that the war was going to start back up again this morning. And that turned out that was correct. As I mentioned, the Israelis are going to have to kind of re-clear a lot of the ground that they've already taken because they pulled out of that. They left a force in there to guard sort of the limit of their advance, but they pulled out and a lot of forces and let them go home and rest and that sort of thing. So they are going to have to go back in and very carefully clear back through that because there were civilians running around. There are still lots of tunnels, and so it's likely that there are IEDs and booby traps and stuff. The total, if you're keeping track, the total number of IDF who have died in combat since the invasion started, not since October 7th, is 70. I think it's 77 at this point. It's the last number that I saw. That's actually a very low number. We were gaming this out. I have a friend who is a expert at the open source Intel stuff, and we were talking about it before the invasion happened, and he actually put out on his Substack that he thought it would be likely the IDF would take maybe 9 to 16 deaths a day in this fight. They've taken significantly fewer than that. So it's been averaging 2-3 a day is probably about the average now. They released numbers yesterday of the number of wounded that they have, and it's just over 2,000. It was like 2,007 wounded in combat. The vast majority of those have not been wounded badly enough to need to be hospitalized, for a long period of time. Most of them are recovering at home or have been patched up and sent back, gone back to their units. There are only about 300 IDF troops that are in the hospital, according to the IDF numbers right now. I corroborated those numbers by going to the hospital and speaking with the doctors and the administrator and surgeons and stuff, and they said the same. Yeah, that's probably about right. So when you think about the actual numbers of wounded, if you have 2,000 people wounded, I don't know that it goes both directions. We've always been saying that the typical ratio is 3 to 1. So 3 wounded for every 1 killed. If there are 2,000 wounded, you should have a lot more killed, but I don't know that it actually goes that direction. I think maybe that ratio is more, if you know the number of killed, you can infer the number of wounded. So either way, this every death's a tragedy, of course, but this has been less costly in terms of lives for the IDF than people expected going in. That may be about to change, and I'm going to tell you why. So we've been talking all along, sort of speculating on what the IDF is going to do when it's time to go into the southern part of Gaza. They've encircled Gaza City, and they're clearing out Gaza City, but this is going to take a long time for them to do. Just clearing out Gaza City, because it's a big city. And from talking to the engineer major yesterday, whose job it is to go in there and clear booby traps and all that stuff, he said it is booby trapped like you can't believe. There are booby traps everywhere in northern Gaza. And they've just had a week to set more, to booby trap more things and set up IEDs where there weren't before, and that sort of thing. So the Hamas fighters have had a week to prepare for the fight that's happening right now as we speak. And so is the IDF, but they were already prepared. I would make a prediction that the fighting for the next few days is going to be much harder than the fighting has been heretofore, simply for that reason. Hamas has been able to prepare, plan, and put things in place, IEDs, booby traps, bombs, and snipers and things like that, to continue to hold off, to fight the IDF. They're not holding them off, they're losing. And they're going to lose. The IDF is not going to lose this fight. Hamas is going to lose. But the question is, how long can they hold out? And the reason why that's important is because of what happened yesterday, what we saw here with Anthony Blinken coming from the United States to meet with Benjamin Netanyahu. And all pretense was sort of laid aside. It's Anthony Blinken came in and told him, sort of in no uncertain terms, you don't have enough credit with the United States to continue this fight. Meaning, we're going to stop supporting you if you don't make this ceasefire permanent. And I don't think Netanyahu physically threw him out, but once he left to go meet with Mahmoud Abbas in the West Bank, so Anthony Blinken then went and met with a leader of a terrorist group, essentially, to ensure to assure that terrorist, the head terrorist of that group. Actually, Mahmoud Abbas is a moderate when it comes to terrorists, but a moderate terrorist is still a terrorist. And after he left to go meet with Abbas, Bibi met with his war cabinet, and they made an unequivocal statement that we're not going to be cowed into stopping this thing before it's time. We are going ahead with this, and we're going to go hard. I think they are redoubling their efforts in Gaza because they're letting loose ships now that are guided missile ships. They're shooting missiles from the sea. They have been off and on during the fighting already, but I mean, they say that the intensity of the bombing today in Gaza has been like they've never seen. And they've been dropping leaflets on southern Gaza now. So this is a new development. They dropped leaflets on southern Gaza telling people to leave certain areas of southern Gaza because it's going to become an active combat zone sooner rather than later. This is interesting to me because I sort of wondered, we've been speculating that they would sort of clean up the northern part of Gaza and then they would turn their attention south and start pushing south. After what I saw yesterday, a lot of what I do, especially when you can only travel around the edges of the battlefield instead of going onto the battlefield, which I would like to do. But a lot of what I do is reading between the lines. And so watching what is happening based on the 20 years of experience I've got, covering wars and disasters, and 8 years in the military before that, going to combat on my own. This is my wife taking very good care of me to make sure that I have enough tea to keep the old moneymaker going there. Thank you, dear. And wow, thank you for all of the YouTube chat contributions. That's helpful. CBN is using that to keep us here in the field, and we are very grateful for everybody who contributes to CBN. If you want to join CBN, join us with what we're doing around the world, you can go to cbn.com and you can contribute there, and we'll get more of your contributions there than if you contribute here on YouTube, but we'll take them on YouTube also. Whatever's easiest for you. If you go over to cbn.com, they're tax deductible, which is helpful. Maybe for you, I don't know. It wouldn't be for me. But so I think that the IDF feels like they need to step up the pace, and I saw that as I was driving around yesterday. Like the amount of armor. I was down there just before the invasion started. I saw how they were preparing to go into Gaza the first time, and this is another level of preparation, greater quantities. And what that tells me is they're going to try to do both. They're going to stay in the north and continue clearing in the north, and they're going to move into the south and start actually moving south. Now, what they released today, if you want to see all of this stuff I'm talking about, the videos of the shooting, the graphics that I'm talking about here, you can go to chuckholton.com, just my name, Chuck Holton, HOLTON.com, and it'll take you to my locals page, and you can see a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about. So they released a web page and put it out on social media today in Arabic, saying we are dividing up Gaza into a series of blocks, not like city blocks, but like blocks, like areas, zones, okay? And we've numbered them all. And so look at this map and find your number, because when we start dropping leaflets or putting the word out that we're going to go into zone number 243, and you live in 243, it's time for you to get out. So we're going to be alerting people before we go in to the zone that we're going to be operating in that day, and give you time to pack up and leave, or at least leave, maybe not pack up. Now, this is extraordinary because no military in the world does this. Lets the enemy know exactly what very small area they're going to move into next. I had a discussion yesterday with an IDF spokesperson who is one of the people who helps the journalists, the group of journalists assembled, to try to get the word out about what's happening, to disseminate the information the IDF is putting out. And they took us in a room, they showed us a bunch of videos of what they had found inside Gaza, and showed us that here's a kindergarten with bombs piled up in the corner of the kindergarten, mines, explosives, crates of hand grenades in a school. Wow, that's a different kind of school. If they had had hand grenades when I went to school, I wouldn't be able to wave at you today, But they had hand grenades in the school. They had hand grenades in children's bedrooms. They have rockets underneath kids' beds, where they're just storing them all over the place. And it made it clear that at least Beit Hanun, which is what they were talking about yesterday, is not a town, it's a military base with a town on top of it. The town just lives in and among all the military stuff. And it's part of their lives. The people there are all militarized. They're all part of Hamas, per se. And they're showing us all this video as they're moving through Gaza, and they're showing us tunnel entrances, and they're showing us, what they are saying. Here's proof that we have reason to go in here. Here's proof that Hamas is as bad as we say they are. Here's proof that they hide behind little children and women and whatever. And when we walked outside, I was just standing there while the guy smoked a cigarette and talking to him, and I said, I believe you. When you show us that video, I mean, you don't need to convince me that this is real, that October 7th really happened, that they were as bad as you say they are, because I believe it. But you have to understand that all of this video was shot by you, and it's being given to me. And you want me to disseminate it like it's fact, but I have no way to corroborate it. So you showing me the video of an empty room with some hand grenades in it and telling me that that's a kindergarten, I believe you, but most of the world probably will be skeptical because you're one of the warring parties. You have to have, that's the reason we have a fourth estate. You have to have observers along with you who are not part of you to document what's going on. And if what you're doing is righteous, then it shouldn't, you shouldn't worry about that. You shouldn't be worried about having a third party, even if they're not non-biased, okay, even if they're CNN or the BBC or somebody that wants to sandbag you, is looking for a reason to make you look bad. If what you're doing is righteous, then I believe the word will get out if you allow enough people in to tell the truth. And if you only take CNN or if you only take the BBC, then yeah, you're going to get what you get out of them, and people are going to believe what the selective editing that they put out. But go ahead and put out what you're filming. That's fine. But you need to let us in so that we can, enough of us can be telling the story to corroborate what you're saying. And otherwise, you are losing the information war. I don't care how much video you put out of rockets under little kids' beds. You're still going to lose the information war because nobody can corroborate what you're saying. And if you're worried about this, the other big worry that the militaries always have is that the journalists are going to give away, they're going to telegraph what they're about to do and alert somehow, by broadcasting, alert the enemy to their plans, which will then thwart their plans or make it easy to get ambushed or something like that. But in this case, the IDF itself is telegraphing its next move to the enemy on purpose in order to be able to claim that they are avoiding civilian casualties, or at least doing their best to avoid civilian casualties wherever possible. And so it does. So there's no reason for you not to allow other people to come in and broadcast from there, because you yourself are broadcasting your intentions before you do it. You've taken that very strategic piece of this battlefield away from yourselves on purpose in order to try to win the information war. But you're losing the information war because you won't allow third-party observers to take a look at what you're doing. The last excuse that he gave me was that, well, yeah, but we're just concerned about your safety. And I was like, yeah, that's none of your concern. If I am a professional war correspondent, if I'm a journalist and I am willing to go into battle alongside your troops, then It's not your concern if I get killed in there. It's not on you if I get killed in there. And indeed, in most of the wars that I have been to since Afghanistan, when you go and embed with a unit, you sign a piece of paper that says, I understand that I'm taking my life in my hands here, and I'm not holding the unit that I'm traveling with responsible if I get hurt. That's boilerplate. That's the kind of thing that you always see that. And indeed, we had to sign one of those to get the press card that we got to be able to report from here. So we've already crossed that bridge. We've already taken care of that problem. So for you to stand there and say, oh, we're worried about your safety, you're patronizing me. And you're losing the information war in the process. And so there were some of the other spokespeople that were standing around listening to this conversation, and they were heartily agreeing with me. They were like, yes, yes. And he's like, well, I said, look, of all the people that are here, he said there are 2,000 journalists here to cover the war. And I believe that. And many of them are only really journalists in the loosest sense of the word. And I'm not, casting aspersions, but, they're non-affiliated. They're just somebody who has a blog or something, and they just came here and they're wandering around, and they've got 12 people watching. It's like, okay, man, I get it if you want to weed out somebody like that or whatever, but and that's why they used to have this whole, you're a accredited journalist. Accredited is not something that you get when you graduate from journalism school. Accredited is something you get on the ground when you get where you're going. And so everybody here that's got one of those press cards is accredited as a journalist. That means that the General Press Office here in Israel has has done a background check on us, looked at our credential, our history, and decided that they're willing to let us come in and do journalism here in Israel. So if you've already gone through that process, and now you're telling me that, well, we're just concerned for your safety. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're not concerned for my safety. You're just unwilling to allow that third party to come in. You think you can get away, Israel, with putting out the information that you want us to consume and to give out to the world, and that will be good enough. But it's not good enough for many people. Again, I believe what they're giving me. I don't think that IDF has any reason to lie. I've not seen any indication that anything they're saying is untrue or is exaggerated or anything. But most of the world is going to be much more skeptical because they're not here on the ground. The people who are skeptical ought to come here and come with me and go look at and see what I'm seeing. And I've done this. I had some journalist friends who were very, very skeptical about the war in Ukraine and were reporting a lot of Russian propaganda, frankly, out of the war in Ukraine, but with never having been there. And here I'd spent months and months there, and so I called my buddies and was like, you need to come to Ukraine and be on the ground here before you report on what's going on. Telling all of your followers that, there are bio labs everywhere around Ukraine, until you come and you see them with your own eyes, you need to be quiet about that because you don't know what you're talking about and you're making yourself look silly to people who know what is going on. And two of them actually took me up on it. These two of my journalist buddies came with me. We went to Ukraine for a couple of weeks, and their minds were changed. They saw the reality on the ground and said, wow, it's not like I thought it was. And unfortunately, all of you can't do that, and so you have to rely on what we can put out. Why am I telling you all this? I want you to have the context that goes around the news and not just the news itself. If I just tell you what's happening, the out of the ordinary things that have happened on the ground in the last 24 hours, in a venue like this where I have the ability to go much, much further than that, then I'm kind of doing you a disservice, because what you if you want to truly understand what's happening on the ground in Israel, and you can't be on the ground in Israel, then you've got to let me give you that context of the background to what's going on. Again, I'm not saying there's anything nefarious with the IDF or with the Israelis. I don't believe there is. But you need to understand that we are all being very tightly regulated as to what we are allowed to report. And it's a shame, because I can't see any reason why the IDF shouldn't allow more people into Gaza to report on what's going on. Would some maybe get hurt? Probably. That's part of it. That's part of this job. But because I believe that what the IDF is doing is righteous, I think that the positives would far outweigh the negatives for Israel to be much more liberal with letting people go in. The other thing that is stopping them is that they're like, we just don't have the logistics to take 2,000, journalists into Gaza. And I'm like, well, actually you do. It's called the Israeli Defense Forces. These guys are thinking, I have to keep all these journalists in one place together and put them on buses and bus them in and hold their hand and show them around and then bus them back out. That's not the way you do this in a war. The IDF spokespeople don't understand that the way that you do this with 2,000 journalists is you open up the ability to embed with your units all over the country, north, south, east, and west. Put us with reserve units. Put us with anything, any units. I'm not saying that we have to be, I want to be running right behind the Israeli SEAL team as they're, kicking in a door, although I would totally go for that. That'd be great. I'm not saying that they should do that. Obviously, there are certain units or certain missions where it's not appropriate to have a non-military guy running around who could, make himself a liability. But putting a guy with every company, open up a slot with every company. A company's 120 people. So of every 120 Israeli soldier company, allowing a journalist to go and just tell them, like, this is how it worked in Afghanistan and Iraq at the beginning of the war on terror. They just let us go in and they said, you are part of this unit. You are assigned to this unit, meaning you can't leave that unit until you get permission to leave, because, you may be way out in the field somewhere. You have to obey the orders that are given to you by the officers in this unit. And if you do anything to harm or endanger that unit, you're gone. You're out of here, and you're not coming back. That was the way the U.S. military operated in Afghanistan and Iraq for more than a decade. After the first 10 years in that war, it started getting more and more like it is here, where they just, especially under the Obama administration, they did not want you to talk about what was going on over there. They didn't want that in the public consciousness. Well, Israel does want what's happening in Gaza in the public consciousness. They do want the word to get out, but they are woefully unprepared or unwilling to actually allow it to happen. And again, it was all it would take, is just let me go in, embed with a unit. I'll sleep with them. I eat with them. I run around with them, do whatever they're doing. And the rule is, if you make an idiot of yourself in any way, shape, or form, you're gone. And that's how you weed out the journalists that shouldn't be there. As it turned out, they had some problems like that in Iraq and Afghanistan, but relatively few. There were times when, I'd get pulled aside and say, hey, be real careful about, filming right now because of what we're about to do, or, hey, please don't turn on your satellite phone for the next couple of days because of where we're going to go, or, just something along those lines. And I saw times when there were journalists who accidentally put out more information than they should have. Okay, so I get that. But the very best commanders that I reported under in Afghanistan and Iraq were the ones who pulled me in their office and said, look, man, you're in the military, you know the deal, don't do anything stupid. But other than that, you can ask anybody anything and you can put it on camera as long as they give you permission to show their face. It's fine with us. Go for it. That was the best. It was, when they start saying to the press, we don't trust you to do your job, that there starts to be a adversarial relationship between the press and the IDF. And that is not good for the IDF. It's not good for the press either, because we can't get the word out. We can't tell the true story of what's going on because we can't go see it with our own eyes. But it's worse for the IDF. And so if you have any contacts with the IDF, tell them to come watch this, and maybe we can convince them to actually, start loosening up a little bit. We've been working every angle we can with these guys, and they're super friendly. They understand what we're trying to do. I think they just are not being allowed to facilitate it, and it's hurting them more than it's hurting us. So there's that. Okay, so to recap, let's see what time we got. We got a few minutes left. Recap. The hostilities have started back up again. They are more intense now than they were last, a week and a half ago or whatever when they stopped it. They are probably going to move into southern Gaza as well as continuing operations in northern Gaza. And there have been a tremendous amount of rocket attacks out of Gaza and out of Lebanon, both today. The IDF has struck back on those places in Lebanon, and of course they're striking back on Gaza. Hamas is just firing off all of its rockets, and it's sad, again, because it's just a waste. It's just a waste. The vast majority of those rockets are not going to strike anything of value because they're not precision guided or anything. They just point them at Israel. There's a lot of open ground in southern Israel, and the vast majority of those are going to not actually be a threat. And you factor in the Iron Dome system and how unbelievably effective that thing is. They shoot down the ones that are going to be a threat. And so let's just pray that those rockets all go astray and nobody gets hurt by them, nothing gets destroyed by them, and Hamas shoots all the rockets it has or gets them destroyed on the ground, and then they're over. It's done. The one good note, if you want some good news out of all of this, is that for every rocket that's fired, for every rocket launch site that gets blown up, for every Hamas fighter that's killed, for every Hamas commander that they find and arrest or take out in the West Bank and elsewhere, for every ATG, anti-tank guided missile site that they blow up in Lebanon, that's one less that will be able to threaten Israel in the future. Iran is still trying to resupply those guys. That's not going real well for them so far, from what we understand. Israel has been making it really, really hard on Iran. And that's your update. So let's take a couple questions and then we'll go. Now is the time to be asking your question. So they probably have a list of them. Hang on a second. I got to grab my phone. Let's see here. Dan Crutchfield says that there's a fourth person who has died from the mass shooting that took place down the road here yesterday. That's sad. I hate to hear that. So let's see what other questions we've got here. I don't know if those guys are actually still on. They got a problem with your tea, they can keep scrolling. That's right. Is the baby's family deceased? The baby? You mean the little baby? Yeah, the father is not. Hamas says the mother and the other sibling are. Thank you for emailing me. If you'd like to connect with me, you can send me your comments at hotzoneholton@gmail.com. hotzoneholton@gmail.com. You can also find my additional reporting, doing a lot of additional reporting on my Hot Zone channel here on YouTube. It's called The Hot Zone with Chuck Holton. Go look that up, please, and subscribe. I'm going to be doing another live on my channel shortly after this one ends. And I'll be able to answer a lot more of your questions because there's not, 5,000 people online. Do you recon Hamas? Do I reckon Hamas paint Shalom on their rockets? No idea. Have not seen that. I do have some pieces of Hamas rockets that I've recovered. Some shrapnel, because I have a voluminous collection of shrapnel at home, which basically looks like a pile of junk, a pile of metal. But for me, each piece means something. And but I haven't seen anything painted on there. Okay, so read the super chats. All right, let's do that. We'll send you info on your mail. I think it explains the situation better. Okay, let's see. Reading super chats. Thank you very much, Karen. All I see is Karen is a couple people leaving contributions. I don't see questions there. Let's see here. Okay, that's all conversation. When does the rainy season start here in Israel? They say it already has started. We had a couple of days that have been very rainy and miserable over the last week, and that was hard on the troops. We talked a lot with the troops yesterday about their morale, and they were saying our morale is very high. And I was thinking, they're going back in. Because when I was an infantryman, my morale was high when they were going to let me do something. When I felt like the waiting was interminable, my morale wasn't very high. I talked to a couple soldiers, young guys, and just asked them. I like asking them, like, what were you doing on October 7th? And one of them said he was dancing at a party near Reim when that happened, and he knew a lot of the people that were at Reim. So for him, this is very personal. It's interesting to see these soldiers getting to go home in the middle of the war. That's not something that ever worked. It wouldn't work for American troops because we were always so far overseas. These guys, the war is right here, so they can take a break. They get the IDF has done a really good job, I think, of giving these guys a break now and then to go home and visit their family and their loved ones. And so that's an answer to prayer for me. I mean, I feel for the soldiers a lot because I was a soldier, and I know what it's like when you're the guy that's on the front line and you're just like waiting for the brass to make a decision, and they're not telling you what's going on. You think about how uncertain it is to be a soldier when you're not a leader. They just tell you, like, go sit in that hole and point your weapon that way and pull security. And then you just sit there and, like, you don't know what's going on. You don't know what they're planning. They're back there having a meeting for 10 hours, and you're like, how long am I going to have to sit here? You don't know. It's really difficult and hard on the morale. So they know that yesterday they were in good spirits, and I figured it was because they were going to go back in. What is the cheapest long-term housing you can get in Israel now? Long-term housing. I haven't checked all over the country. Obviously, where I'm standing is not going to be the cheapest part of the country, but it is likely that you could probably find a place for, less than $1,000 a month if you were out in the countryside, or obviously if you go into a West Bank kind of area, it might be cheaper there, a little more dangerous there. It's kind of like going to a bad neighborhood. There are some kibbutzim where you can go and do like short to medium term stays, but I don't know about long term. Okay, let's see. Thank you for your honesty and truth. Question: do you plan to come back to Nahira? Not at the moment, Jody. I don't have any plans right now. I'm not saying I wouldn't. I'm just saying I don't have any plans to right now. Question: I meant to say let you in. Okay. Long-term housing. Yeah. Yeah. Ask Yeshka says, I was triple R and we were not sitting in a hole. Yeah, because you were in the Air Force, dude. The Air Force does not sit in holes. The Army does that. There's an old joke that is, of course, to be a joke, it has to have a grain of truth. That, there's an Army guy sitting in the rain in a foxhole and saying, "Oh man, this stinks." And then there's a Special Forces guy, and he's sitting in the same foxhole and getting rained on, and he's saying, "I love how much this stinks." And then there's a ranger, and he's sitting in the foxhole next to him, and he's saying, "I wish it was stunk more." And then there's an Air Force guy, and he's flying overhead looking down going, "I must really stink down there." Yeah. Let's see here. Somebody's saying "thou shalt not kill" means just that. Killing is wrong. Okay. Well, Clipper guy, can I speak to that? I get asked that a lot because, again, I'm a soldier and a Christian. The killing/murder debate. The Bible says "thou shalt not commit murder." And C.S. Lewis made a very good point when he said that all killing is not murder, like all sex is not adultery. And there are times when killing is not only justified, but righteous, necessary. And all you have to do is go read, like Romans 13, that where it talks about the fact that leaders who are put in place over a nation, when they exercise violence, they are acting as God's agents of wrath against the evildoer. And so I've talked to a lot of Vietnam veterans who really struggle with the fact that they had to take lives when they were in the war in Vietnam. And I tell them, you don't need to struggle with that. You were acting as an agent of the government. And so you were the agent of wrath that the Bible talks about in Romans. And if there is any culpability with what you were ordered to do, it's not on your head. It's on the head of the leaders that were put in place by God. And that shouldn't be really difficult, because there are any number of times where if you just want to generalize and say that as a Christian, it's my job to do the most loving thing possible in every situation, in any case. And I need to think about the hard choices when doing the most loving thing possible actually includes shooting somebody in the face. And it does. There are times like that. So just imagine this scenario. You're a soldier in Afghanistan or anywhere, and you're guarding a marketplace filled with innocent people, children running around, playing soccer, or, whatever. And here comes a guy with a suicide vest on that's running for the marketplace. And he is going to, in seconds, blow himself up and murder untold numbers of people in that marketplace. And you have the solution to that problem right here in your hands. And all it takes is 11 pounds of pressure with this finger and a decent aim to solve that problem and to keep those people alive, to save those people's lives. Ask yourself, what's the most loving thing that you can do for those people in the marketplace? Well, it's pretty clear. You can shoot that guy in the face. But I would submit to you, what's the most loving thing you can do for that bomber? And I would say it's to shoot him in the face, because you're not going to reason with him. So he's going to have to very shortly stand before God one way or another. And he's going to have to answer for what he has done in his life. And if you shoot him before he murders a whole bunch of people, those are sins that he would have had to stand before God and answer for. Now, you can split hairs about whether or not the intention to kill them is the same as killing them, but suffice it to say, those people are going to still be alive. And so the most loving, in aggregate, the most loving thing you can do at that moment is to take a life and to stop that guy from what he's about to do. You can extrapolate from that very simple, easy to understand example to this war and what the IDF is having to do in Gaza. Yes, the IDF is killing people in Gaza. Some of those people are even non-combatants, women and children. Some of those women and children might not actually support Hamas, because I would say if they do, it sort of negates the argument. But and so those people have they do not merit being killed because of this war, but they are being killed by the IDF. Does the culpability for those deaths, though, fall on the IDF? And I would submit to you the answer is no, it does not. Because they didn't start this. They are doing exactly what a government is supposed to do, and that is take whatever steps necessary to protect the people who elect them and pay their taxes. Unfortunately, that will, because it's war, result in some collateral damage. No army in the world has ever been as judicious about trying to avoid that collateral damage as Israel has, in my professional experience. And so all of the deaths, every one of them that's happening in Gaza, whether they are military, civilian, whether they're a righteous kill, or all of them are on the heads of Hamas. This is what happens when you are consumed by your hate. You're so consumed by your hate that you lash out and hurt someone else. You always, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's in a country, you end up hurting yourself worse. And so think about that as we wrap up here tonight, okay? The shooting in Jerusalem was a Hamas hit. They were Hamas agents that killed now 4 people here in Jerusalem. Political science Norman Finkelstein says the operation such as cast lead pillar of defense is what fuels Palestinian anger. What's my opinion on that? What's my opinion on this guy's? He says his opinion is that everything Israel is doing right now is only making the Palestinians hate them more. It's making it worse. And I would submit that there's no possible way that the Palestinians could hate the Israelis more than they already do. They already hate them with every fiber of their being. So if it were possible for you to make them hate you 10% more than that, it's not really going to make a difference. It's not going to change their behavior. It's not like they're going to get even worse than they already are. They are fully committed, according to them, according to what they say, they are 100% committed to the destruction of the state of Israel, to the point that they are willing to sacrifice their own children to make it happen. How do you get more committed than that? How do you get more hate-filled than that? I hate you so much, I will massacre my own kid if that's what it takes for me to be able to kill you. I don't think you can get worse than that. So I don't think it matters. All right. The commandment is not thou shalt not kill. It is thou shalt not commit murder, if you go look a little closer at what your Bible says. It's about murder and not simply death. Okay, folks, we are going to let it go at that because I've got more work to do tonight, but I appreciate you all being on with me today. Let's pray. Let's pray for the state of Israel. Lord Jesus, as this fighting now kicks back in Gaza and up on the northern border, we just pray your protection over the state of Israel and the people of Israel. We pray your protection over innocents wherever they are. We pray that you would intervene in a supernatural way to protect the soldiers on the front lines in the IDF down there as they do what they must to safeguard their people. We've already seen so many examples, Lord, of miracles that have taken place in this war, and we know that you're working here. We pray that you would work by sending your Holy Spirit into Gaza to convict Hamas, to convict those fighters, and to convict the people themselves, the Palestinians there, and to allow them to let go of their hatred and spend their energies improving their own situation rather than trying to tear down Israel. Lord, I pray that you would make a place for everybody in Gaza, that these civilians would have a place to run to if indeed they want to get away. I pray that you would give supernatural intuition and discernment to the soldiers that are having to contend with these booby traps everywhere on the front lines. And I pray that you'd bring this whole mess to an end very soon. We know, Lord, that things are going to keep getting worse as the days get shorter before your return. And so we long for that return. We long for the day when you will wipe away every tear from our eyes, and there will be no more war and no more hatred and no more heartache. We look forward to that day, Lord. But in the meantime, give us the courage to stand against what's wrong and to keep pulling people out of this fire until the very last day, so that when you show up to call us home, Lord, you'll find us busy working to build your kingdom. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, thank you, folks. God bless you all. I appreciate you. Take care. Okay. All right, here we go. Sorry, folks, I'm a couple minutes late because I hit go live and it went boo and just shut down. The whole thing crashed. Just my luck. Normally I don't have this kind of problem with technical gear. I'm kind of a camera guy as much as I am a reporter, and I was Oliver North's cameraman for 6 years, and I've worked as a cameraman for many years. Was a cameraman first, actually, and then here I am, for some reason here running this kind of stuff. There's always a little bug in the works. Thank you for joining us tonight. Greetings. The first thing I wanted to do was I want to give a shout out of congratulations to my lovely youngest daughter, Amy, and her new fiance, Mark Tomlin. They just got engaged about an hour ago, as I was doing the live on my podcast over at the Hot Zone with Chuck Holton. I was live, and I got the phone call like while they were screaming and yelling and jumping around, and so I just wanted to say congratulations to Mark and Amy, and I hope they have many, many happy years together. Really fantastic. They are both students at Regent University, which is where CBN is, and so there's a lot of overlap between them and CBN. Mark was my intern this summer and actually helped me come up with a amazing, well, he didn't help me come up with it, he came up with it, an amazing artificial intelligence program, I guess is the best way to call it, that helps me write scripts for my CBN pieces much, much faster. I mean, much faster. And it's one of those things that either you're going to get in front of that technology and ride that wave, or you're going to get crushed by it. And so we decided to ride the wave, and it's been just amazing to see what these kids can come up with this AI. It's really fascinating. All right, we're going to talk about some breaking news real quick from Israel. I'm here in Jerusalem. It is currently 8:05 on Saturday, December 2nd, and 8:05 p.m. And we just heard from the office of Benjamin Netanyahu that he has spoken with the Mossad chief and has instructed him to bring his team home from Qatar and give up on the negotiations for the remaining hostages. They've been in negotiations for the remaining, I think it's 137 hostages, something like that. They're out there somewhere. And the office of the Prime Minister says that the counterparts, Qatari counterparts who are negotiating for Hamas, have not been forthright in the negotiations, and they're not meeting their agreements, and it's not worth messing with them anymore. So he instructed his team to come home, said thank you very much to the CIA and the Egyptian officials that were there, and they're done. They're done negotiating, and it's time to get back to fighting. Thank you, my dear. So forgive me for trying to keep my voice box running here, but this is a second hour of TV I've made so far today. So, and I spent all day at a what would be called a Jewish settlement in the West Bank. I think it's just a village full of Israelis overlooking Bethlehem, which is kind of cool. Bethlehem is in one of those A zones, so you can't really visit Bethlehem. You can look at it from above and look down on it, but you can't really go in there because you'll probably die. And it was a nice day. It was Shabbat. We got invited over to lunch for one of my viewers, one of you. Apparently, I've been surprised at how many viewers I have here in Israel who are not, they're not following the Christian Broadcasting Network beforehand. They're just finding us because they're looking for updates on the war, and they're following me. I go to the grocery store and people go, hey, you're that guy. And are you good? You leaving? Yeah, I'm live. Yeah. Just say goodbye to my cameraman over here, one of the guys that came over from DC to help, and he is his name is Haney, and he's been a big help. We're very glad that he's been here. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas, man.
You too.
All right, God bless you.
Stay safe.
So we got invited out to have lunch, Sabbath lunch, with this Jewish couple that lives out in a place called Efrat. Efrat is the name of the village. There's like 17,000 people that live there. A lot of Americans, apparently. These guys are Americans, and they moved. They're Jewish. They moved to Israel. Felt called to do that, and it was a wonderful lunch. They got 3 great little boys, and it was a wonderful time. Nice home cooked meal, very good food, and the nicest family that I've run into out here. but I haven't been invited in to eat with a lot of them. So that's a small list, but very, very kind people. And it was very instructional to get a chance to talk to them about the issues that they face in the settlement there, and just how skewed. The one takeaway, I won't belabor this whole thing, but the one takeaway I got from spending time with these folks, going for a walk with them around, meeting some of their friends and stuff, is that virtually everything that you hear in the media about the illegally occupied West Bank and the illegal settlements that the Jews have there is wrong. Virtually everything you hear is wrong. It is intentionally wrong to try to change your opinion about Israel. And the people who are living in these villages are not illegally there. They are completely legal. They are not wandering around with assault rifles looking for an Arab to kill. That's not happening. But they are in very great danger, very grave danger. And I wanted to mention that because, that's probably the most dangerous place in Israel right now to just be living, because they have evacuated most of the people from the north and from the south. Many of those people are living right over here in this hotel right across from me. And they have been there now for coming on 2 months. That's got to be really difficult. Not being able to be in your home, not being able to go to work and all that kind of stuff. But there's 500,000 more Israelis living in the West Bank, and they haven't been evacuated. And perhaps they should have been, but they haven't been. Israel has beefed up security there. There are a lot of IDF troops that are stationed out there, mostly reservists. They're they're great, dedicated soldiers, no doubt, but they're not special forces or anything like that. They're the kind of the maybe not even the National Guard. They're more like the state militia. Okay, as far as their level of equipment, training, things like that. These are the guys that they have left over after sending the best infantry and stuff they can into Gaza. Again, there's nothing wrong with these soldiers, but they need more training. Their equipment's not the greatest. It's the older equipment that Israel has, and they are vastly outnumbered by angry Arabs all over the West Bank. So they have to, they pray a lot. And I was just talking to my friend Tim Miller tonight. Tim Miller is the guy that I had on a few nights ago to talk about, being prepared yourself for a terror attack in the United States. That's one question I'm getting a lot, is do I think that this will result in a terror attack in the United States? The answer is unequivocally yes. I do think that this will, all of this is going to lead to more terror attacks in the United States, and likely, possibly, a massive multi-cell terror attack, which is more like what we saw here on October 7th. That would seem to suggest that you would want to be as prepared as possible for you and your family to be able to protect yourselves, defend yourselves in case of something like that. And that's all, of course, location dependent on where you live in the United States and what the security posture is like where you are. If you're in the Bronx, that's going to be different than if you're in, West Virginia, where we have a house, because it's not going to be a problem in West Virginia. They probably wouldn't get 15 feet down our road even before they'd get picked up, because there's just a lot of armed people in West Virginia. And that's one of the things I like about it. So I was talking to Tim about the issue out in the West Bank, and Tim is kind of a spokesman for a company called Milo Range Training Systems. And you should go look that up. If you're a concealed carrier, if you're a guy that wants to be, prepared and trained to protect your family, Uh, they're I'm not getting paid to say this. I'm just saying that I know these guys, and they make a range training system that is it goes indoors. It's got a projector, and it has a projects a video on the wall, but it's highly computerized, and so you have a dummy firearm, so to speak, like a laser firearm, and when you pull the trigger, the laser hits the wall, and the video actually changes based on your behavior. And so it's a very, very good training aid for policemen, for soldiers, and for everyday people who want to be able to make the right decision if you ever get into a really bad situation. Okay, that's enough of that. I'm not trying to sell those things. I'm just saying I was talking to Tim about bringing some of those over here, and because one of the things that the guys I was talking to today were telling me is that there's a lot of people out here that are getting permits for guns. This is where they're allowing people to get gun permits kind of on an expedited basis out here. They've had more than 200,000 people that have asked for a gun here in Israel since the October 7th attack, and they're getting the guns, but they're not getting enough ammo to train with, and so they're not getting the training they need, and that's a scary proposition. That's bad. So we're trying to think of ways that we can help to train these moms and dads. These are people who work on kind of the neighborhood watch on steroids kind of thing in those settlements, to train them up quickly to be able to correctly use their firearm, but more importantly, correctly discern when to use their firearm, because that's what the Milo system is all about. It's not so much about just standing on the range and bang, bang, bang. It's more about the mindset and the decision making that goes into a lethal force encounter, and how to make that decision in a split second, and then to deploy and execute. And so it's, again, something that we were talking about. We may need to actually try to raise some money for that, because those systems are not free, and we'd like to get some of those systems over here. If you know of anybody who would be interested in either helping to train Israelis or donating to help Israelis get trained with these systems, send me an email, please, hotzoneholton@gmail.com, hotzoneholton@gmail.com, and we'll start a conversation about that. Again, I'm not selling anything here. I'm just, because this is a great platform. There's a lot of people with a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge that are watching me right now who could potentially, and I'm getting emails all day long, hundreds of emails a day from people who are saying, how do I help? How do I help? I want to help. I want to do something. And I've been pointing them to websites where they can donate and that sort of thing. But if this is your thing and you want to help, then I felt led to just say that tonight, and contact me, and we'll start the process. See what we can do. I don't know what we can do, but we'll see. Okay, so the breaking news again is that Benjamin Netanyahu has called back his team of negotiators from Qatar and has shut down negotiations for getting any further hostages out. He says that Hamas is being disingenuous, that they're not really serious about releasing any more hostages, and so it's not worth bothering with, and they pulled their guys home. This leads us to the next point I want to talk about, which is the real challenge facing Israel. Just a second, I'm going to close this door. Oh, wait, I can't close the door. Can you hand me that power cord, please? I need the power cord so my battery doesn't die. So the real problem that they are facing in the Gaza Strip, and I mentioned this on the last live, is that they are finding now, the further they push into the Gaza Strip, they're finding two things that are disheartening, to say the least. One is that Gaza is a giant, that you've heard it called a giant open-air concentration camp or prison. That's a lie. It's not a prison. Those people, they're not imprisoned. But what it is a giant open air military base. The whole thing. Gaza has been militarized from top to bottom. Every building essentially belongs to Hamas or is used in some way. And so if you're trying to be if you're trying to be precise and you're trying to drop bombs only on the people that need killing, the problem is virtually everything out there is a military target in one sense or another. Like, you could make a case for dropping a bomb on virtually every building in Gaza because they're finding everywhere. They're finding ammunition stored. They're finding rat holes for these tunnels, rocket launchers, rockets, things like that. Today we saw footage of them going into a house, and there was a room in the back of the house that had boxes of UN aid in it. When they pulled the boxes out, underneath all the boxes were about a couple feet thick of rockets, just piled up in this room of just a regular residential house. And they're saying that almost every place we go is like this. And if it's not, it's got booby traps or it's got a bunker in it or something. And they're just like getting a real sense now of the fact that we might have to demolish everything in here. Like, if we're going to just demolish all the infrastructure used by Hamas, then we pretty much have to bulldoze this whole place. And it's a giant open air military base with 2.5 million people milling around on the military base. That's a huge problem. Huge problem. And when we talk about civilians in Gaza, if you happen to see, I'm not going to show you on this because every time I show a Gaza, an IDF video, YouTube demonetizes the video. So I'm putting the videos I'm talking about up on my website, chuckholton.com. That'll take you over to the locals page, and you can see the videos there. You can subscribe to see all my, books, movies, other reporting, everything that I put up over there. But why he drinking tea though? I'm drinking tea because my voice is shot. Okay, lemon ginger, and it's good. My wife is keeping me full of this stuff, so I drink about a gallon of this on every live that I do, and then I run to the bathroom in between, and that's my night, folks. But okay, so these videos I'm putting up over on locals, and you can find them over there. The IDF is telling the civilians to leave certain areas, like we're going into this area tonight, going into this city block, everybody needs to leave, and they don't leave. They stay there. There may be reasons for that, but they stay there. Now, I saw some photographs today where Israel dropped a bomb on a building, and it, of course, rubble everywhere. And there's a kind of high angle photo looking down at all these people milling around in the rubble, and they're all military age males wearing civilian clothes, all of them. There's dozens and dozens of them. Now, this is in northern Gaza. They shouldn't be in northern Gaza unless they're a Hamas fighter. All of them are wearing civilian clothes, and Hamas doesn't, if you think about it, their fighters really don't wear a uniform. They might wear military-ish garb, but they're not wearing a uniform. When you say uniform, the whole point of that word uniform is that all of the soldiers look the same, so that when you're over here and you're looking over there, you can tell, is that my team or not? But Hamas doesn't, their guys don't dress that way. They might dress in camouflage pants or whatever, but they're all just wearing whatever they want to wear. They don't have a uniform. And so these guys that are dressed in sweatpants and t-shirts and stuff that are running around in Gaza, that are military age males, they very well could be Hamas fighters. We just don't know until they're shooting at you. And believe me, having spent 20 years covering the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, getting involved in a place like that, that's called an insurgency, by the way, when civilians are the ones who are shooting at you, or they act like civilians. Fighting in an insurgency is a very long-term prospect. It's not something that you're going to get done with in a month or two. And that is a real problem for Israel because they are bumping up against world pressure. The whole world, especially the United States, is cranking down the pressure on the IDF to end this, and the United States is apparently very angry that the IDF is not continuing to supply Gaza with all these supplies, 200 truckloads of supplies every day, which they agreed to do during the ceasefire, but now it's not a ceasefire. And the U.S. is like, yeah, but you should still be sending those 200 trucks of aid in there every day. But they can't search all that aid. There's no way. And that aid could aside from the fact that whatever food and water and fuel that you send in there is going to be assisting Hamas fighters who are in there in staying alive. But in these giant trucks of aid, 40-foot containers, hundreds and hundreds of them, it would be very, very easy to be shipping in ammunition, explosives, grenades, rockets, anything. And especially since the United States is funding both sides, they're funding the IDF and they're funding the Palestinians. We're looking at a recipe for not a 2-month war, not a 6-month war, not a 1-year war. We're looking at a recipe for total war forever until we run out of money. That's what we're looking at. When you're paying for both sides to continue fighting, you're going to keep having war until you run out of money. Because Israel is not really going to be able to kill its way out of this. There's just too many people in Gaza, and they're all pretending to be civilians, even though most of the civilians probably are supportive of Hamas, although that may be changing. But there's just too many of them. And they obviously they can't kill all the people in Gaza. They don't want to kill all the people in Gaza. They didn't want to kill any of the people in Gaza until October 7th happened. But in order for them to end this, they're realizing that there's so much stacked against them right now. Everything in Gaza is a military target. The people in Gaza are not going anywhere, and they're not friendly to Israel. So they're essentially, if they're not Hamas fighters, they're supporting Hamas in one way or another. The world body is putting the screws to Israel to try to end this thing right now. And so their objective of wiping out Hamas is starting to look more and more distant, even as they make progress in Gaza. Now, don't get me wrong, everybody in Israel is united in their desire to see this happen. Everybody in Israel is behind Netanyahu when he says, we are going to prosecute this war until the end. They're all behind him. But the facts on the ground are very, very challenging for them. They're going to have to come up with a definition of getting rid of Hamas that is actually doable. And you understand, when they say we're going to get rid of Hamas, you kind of have to ask, what does that mean? Because again, you can't kill everybody that is partial to Hamas, or you'd have to kill at least 70% of the people in the Gaza Strip. And they can't do that. You could say, well, we're going to destroy all the Hamas infrastructure, but if almost every house is in some way related to the fight, because the whole of the Gaza Strip has been militarized, well then, what does that look like? What does destroying the infrastructure of Hamas look like? Again, they're going to have to come up with a definition that works. that they can, that's something they can accomplish. I'm not saying they have to compromise. I'm saying they need to tightly define what getting rid of Hamas means, and they need to do it quick. And I believe that the IDF is, because they say that the sheer volume of combat in Gaza right now is much higher than it was before they stopped fighting, when they declared the humanitarian pause or whatever it was. They say that volume of fire, the op tempo has gone way up. Why is that? Well, because Israel feels the heat of all of these, their ostensible benefactors, the United States, breathing down their neck to stop it. And they're like, we got to hurry and do what we're going to do in Gaza, or we're not going to be able to finish it. And so they're going extra hard. But what that does is it virtually guarantees that more IDF soldiers are going to die, because you can't be as methodical and careful as you need to be to accomplish your goals without getting your people killed. You have to basically just run for it. And that's maybe an oversimplification, but without a doubt, it means that the IDF is going to have to put their men at more risk in order to accomplish their objectives, or at least have a shot at accomplishing them. And that means more IDF soldiers are going to die. When I went down and talked to the major from the IDF a couple days ago, who is from the engineering unit, is in charge of blowing up the armaments that they find and disarming booby traps and blowing up tunnels and things like that. We talked at length about this problem, and he's like, you don't understand. I mean, the infantry guys are like, we got to go, come on, and they're pushing all the time. But the engineers are back here going, don't go, because every step you take is mined. There, he said, you would not believe the amount of time and effort that Hamas put into booby trapping everything in sight in northern Gaza. And it's going to be even worse in southern Gaza, because you're going to have that problem plus a couple million people to contend with, many of whom are military-age males who are actually Hamas fighters that you don't know they're fighters until they're shooting at you, because they're dressed in civilian clothes. When they hide among the civilian populace, they are going to be very, very in a lot of danger. They're going to be in a lot of danger going into this, much more than they already are. And I don't want to come across as if I'm, thinking that Israel's going to lose. Nobody wins in a war like this. It's just who's going to lose less. Hamas may very well end up being deposed as a political party. But in cases like this, it's not uncommon for whatever replaces Hamas to be more extreme and more violent and more brutal than even Hamas was. And I'm not even sure that's possible at this point, but without a doubt, Israel is not going to be able to leave the Gaza Strip anytime soon. I'm talking years. They will likely be in there for years and maybe forever. Some of the people I talked to today were like, yeah, that whole two-state solution thing, that's a non-starter anymore. Don't even talk to us about that. That is not going to happen. That two-state deal, not going to happen. That would require Israel to go into the West Bank and forcibly displace 500,000 of its own citizens and give their homes up to people who didn't pay for them. And they're saying it's not going to happen. We're not going to allow it to happen. And no matter what the Biden administration thinks they're going to be able to accomplish, they're not. They're going to fail. But then again, that's what governments are good at, especially this one. And so they're like, don't even talk to us about a two-state solution now. I wanted to get to a few questions real quick, and then I've got one last thing too. Hey, babe. I just ran out of tea. Okay, let's see. Let's get some questions going here. Let's see. I've had a lot of people asking me lately about nuclear, whether or not there's a threat of nuclear bomb going off here in Israel or anything like that. No, I don't think so. That's an easy, short answer. More concerning is our young people in North America supporting Hamas ideology because these young people are our future. That is correct. Our happy life, that is 100% correct. And I think a lot of people in the United States don't understand that Qatar is funding the brainwashing of our children in the United States. Qatar is putting tons of money into universities all around America to heavily influence our children to become more pro-Palestinian. And that's why the difference between 9/11 in 2001, where you saw America come together, albeit briefly, but you did not see any pro-Al-Qaeda, pro-Taliban protests going on all across America. Contrast that with today, where you have all of these pro-Palestinian, thank you, babe, pro-Palestinian protests going on across America, and you can see that Qatar and Iran have been very effective at their strategy of brainwashing our children. They've partnered up with American universities, and they're putting a lot of money into that. China is doing that as well. There's a lot of reporting on that, and you can go find it. I don't need to go into that here. Thank you for the contributions. If you would like to follow my reporting, all of the reporting I do, you can go to chuckholton.com, and find everything you want to know about me, or just go to my Hot Zone podcast here on YouTube, The Hot Zone with Chuck Holton. It's got my picture on it. Can't miss it. And you can follow. I do daily lives over there as well on slightly different subjects, and can answer more questions over there than I can here. Okay. Somebody stands with Palestine, and I feel sorry for you if you stand for Palestine. Yep, stand with Jesus. Sounds like we don't have our guys on. They were not sure they were going to be able to come on. Question: going to West Bank to view the graffiti, your friend. Okay, going to West Bank to view the graffiti, your friend. That's not a question. I'm not sure what you're asking there. Sorry. You might need to rephrase that as an actual question. Okay, let's see what other questions we got. Thank you for watching, folks. I'm very grateful for all of you and for the messages you send. Again, you can reach me at hotzoneholton@gmail.com. Let's see. We've had a lot of people, there's one female hostage left that was not returned. I'm wondering if it's because she's no longer living. All of the hostages that are now left are men, adult men, except for that one woman, as far as I know. If they are going to be rescued, it's going to be in ones and maybe twos. Like I said, it wouldn't make sense for Hamas to keep all those guys in one place. They're all spread out, and this is what we're finding out about the just how deep Hamas is interwoven across the whole society in Gaza, is that they are like basically farmed out these hostages to individual families. So like it'd be like your pastor at your church calling you up and saying, "Hey, we got some kid here that showed up and he's from Cuba. Would you mind giving him a place to stay for a couple days?" And you'd be like, "Sure." And you'd take him in, you'd treat him well, give him ice cream and everything. This is that except evil. So Hamas calls and says, "Hey, guess what? You get to harbor this hostage for us and keep him alive, or you and your family are going to die. But you don't have to treat him, with respect or anything like that. Just make sure he doesn't get away." And so they lock him up in the mop closet or lock him in the attic or in the basement or something like that. And that's where most of these guys are. And so they along with the fact that they don't have any knowledge of if or when they will ever get out, they also don't have the comfort of being able to commiserate with their fellow hostages, most likely. Most likely, many of them are being held alone. And so I think we need to redouble our efforts to pray for these remaining 137 hostages. And there is a website you can go to that lists them all by name. I would highly recommend that you go and do that. You go. We'll see if we can post that. Matter of fact, I'll post it over on my my website, chuckholton.com. I'll post a link to that website so you can go and find the names of the remaining hostages. We shouldn't forget about these guys just because they're not cute little women and children. These guys had no desire, obviously, to spend the holidays with Hamas, and there's a good chance that most of them are being very poorly treated. So we need to pray for comfort and safety and health for these guys and pray that they come home. While I'm asking for prayer, let me also ask that you hit that like button right there. While we're talking, you can go look, hit the little thumbs up button down there, because it according to the algorithm here on YouTube, it really does help. When I was doing the live on my channel over there, I normally have maybe 1,000 people watching or something. And then my daughter decided to get engaged, and my wife brought me the phone live while she was getting engaged. And so I showed it to the people watching, and everybody started making comments, "Congratulations, Jay, hitting the like button," and all that. And lo and behold, in short order, we had 3,000 people online watching. And so what that means is that YouTube actually takes the video and sees that it's very popular because there are a lot of people interacting. There's a lot of, chatter, and it shows it to people that never would have found it before. Why is that important? Well, if you're watching this broadcast and you're a Christian, that's important because there are people out there who need to hear the gospel and need to get connected with the gospel. And every year, thousands of people do that through CBN's work. And so I would recommend that you support CBN in that way. But if you can't afford to actually go to cbn.com and donate, then the least you can do is make a comment, hit the like button, subscribe to CBN. CBN has gotten about 300,000 new subscribers since the start of this war. That obviously are the 300,000 people. I hear from people every day who say, "I didn't even know what CBN was. I'm not a Christian. I never would have watched CBN, but I love what you're doing. So I watch you every night." That is powerful. That's amazing. There are many mainstream primetime news channels, news programs that don't get 300,000 viewers each night. This little silly, informal, sitting around here, just fireside chat kind of thing that I'm doing is somewhere around 300,000 or more a day. And that is mind-boggling to me. I can't believe that. But we just, you know how it goes. We just do our humble work, and we let God do what he wants to with it. So apparently God wants us to be YouTube famous at this point, and that's weird, but whatever. It's not at all what I thought I would be doing when I came to Israel on October 10th, or when I left my home the last time, which was like the 1st of October or something like that. So looking forward to Christmas. I hope you all have a great one. Here's some questions. Great. Did IDF lose much ground during the pause? No, they didn't lose much ground, Limerick. They had to retake some of it because they had kept a defensive line and then pulled back the guys that were behind that line and let some of them go home. They rotated people back and stuff. But they didn't lose a lot of ground. They do have to kind of re-clear some of it just to make sure it's safe. Let's see if there's any other reporting here. Thank you for subscribing, Welch Cat. Appreciate that. Do I know Douglas Murray? I've seen him a lot. We end up in the same places. I know who he is. He probably doesn't know who I am, but he's a great reporter and he really knows his stuff. And you've probably seen him. He's not shy to tell a host that has him on if the host is completely wrong, which I love. Did the idea? Okay, Limerick asked that one a couple times. Thank you for being a partner on the 700 Club. Patty Hudspeth, appreciate that. All right. Well, I have another live I've got to get on here in a few minutes. So if you don't have any more questions, we're going to pray and we're going to go. What do you think Trump would do if he was president right now? You mean besides blasting out angry tweets from while he's sitting on the toilet? I am sure that he would be supporting Israel much more than the Biden administration is, without a doubt. I mean, he's the one who moved the embassy to Jerusalem. That's an awesome thing. Great, good on him for that. But we are seeing around the world, this is something I'm going to address on my podcast. We are seeing a reduction of stability around the world. And I would draw a direct line from that to a weak and feckless foreign policy on the part of the United States. I'll talk about that more on my own channel where I can kind of get into more of what my opinion is. But I think that's fair to see, plain to see all around the world. Keep your eye on Venezuela and French Guiana because it's very likely that Venezuela will invade French Guiana in the next day or two even. So keep your eye on that. And I'm like, can you guys please just space out your wars a little bit? Because there's only one of me. I can't go to all of them. And I'd love to go to Guyana right now, but I still need to be here. And like, can we just take a break for a while? That'd be really nice. Let's see. Did I see the vid Russians say is one last woman being moved after attack on Khan Yunis today? I didn't. I've been on live most of the afternoon, so I'll have to go look that one up. Question, West Wall critique it as promised. I'm sorry, Richard Romano. That's not a question, and I'm not sure what you're talking about. Am I going to get Jonathan on the interview? I've asked him to come on an interview. We have him on the CBN programs on a regular basis. He hasn't been on in the last week or two because he's been, I'm sure, super busy. And I'm hoping to get him on this show sometime, but I've reached out to him and he hasn't got back to me, so we'll see. He does get back to me, but he usually takes a long time to get back to me, and I'm sure he's got a ton of, I know how it goes. It's fine. Isn't Israel freeing Palestine from Hamas? Well, that's their intent. They surely intend to. Our question, does Israel control Jerusalem? Yes, they control Jerusalem. Which live are you doing next? Newsmax. I've got a Newsmax at the top of the hour here. Oh, and so I got to go because I got 2 minutes. Let's pray. All right, Lord, thank you so much for the privilege of being here, even though it's a tragedy. From our perspective, we know that you're powerful enough to turn tragedy into triumph, and that is not just a cliche. God, Your people need you here. And so please come. Please send your Holy Spirit. Send your angels to camp around the soldiers of the IDF and let this be over quickly. I think that's enough said for tonight. Thank you, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, folks. God bless you. We'll see you later. Take care.